It's Ruth, Roland, the Fiddle Geek, with a video on 7th chords. We're going to learn to play the spiciest notes of the 7th chords. We're going to find them first, and then we'll play them. And then at the end, we'll try them out on Herbie Hancock's Watermelon Man. If this interests you, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video on Fiddle Backup. All right, so the 7th chord, when we just say 7th chord, we're usually talking about the major minor 7th chord, which is a major chord with a minor 7th on top. Okay, the best voicing for fiddle backup is to choose the spiciest notes, the most interesting notes of these chords. So if you watched the chord color video that I did, and I've linked it below in case you missed it, you would know that the middle note of the D chord gives it its color. In this case, it's major, right? And so that's one of the spiciest notes. That's colorful. And then the other interesting note is the 7th, right? So this 7th, we find for the D7 chord, we find it by putting our second finger right next to the first finger. For the middle note of the major chord, we find it by putting our second note spaced away from the first finger. But since they're on two different strings, we can play them at the same time. We just have to use two different fingers. We could try to do it with one finger diagonally across the strings, but it's not as easy or as tuneful. That's pretty clean. So how do we find this chord? Now, we could count up 7 notes from D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to find that 7. Or if you notice, this is D, E, F, G, A, B, C. C is the note before D. So we could just go down one note, down a whole step from the name of the chord. It's a D7. When we find D, go down a whole step, and then put the next higher finger on the next lower string. Yes, and this works also if you go down from this open D to this C, right? And then, right, the middle note is the next lower finger on the next higher string. So the next lower finger on the next higher string, or the next higher finger on the next lower string. Either one will get you your spicy notes of the 7th chord, right? Or the next lower finger on the next higher string. And maybe you can hear that those are all equivalent. Those all sound pretty much the same. Good. So let's try. Let's just vamp a little bit. Do some repeats of these D7 chords. We're going to put a little beat to it, and let's do 4 of them. We're going to do 3 bows at a time, just like I was doing just now. 1, 2, ready, and rest. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and so even though they were 3 bows, I was just going back and forth, down, up, down, up. You can do whatever you want, but that's the pattern that I used. Very good. So now we need to find the G7 chord. So G is here, and go down a whole step, and put the next, since we're going to stay on the D and A strings, that's the easy way to do it, just so that they're all on the D and A strings. That's going to make a smooth transition between the two of them. We want to be on the A string, which means the next higher string, so we use the next lower finger. Yes? Okay. 1, 2, ready, and rest. 2, 3, 4. Hey, great job. So now we're going to do the A7 chord. That's the last chord we have to learn. A step down from A is G. We're going to use the next lower finger on the next higher string. Right? It's opposites, right? Next lower finger on the next higher string. But these are the same fingers that we used for the D7. And it might be easier for you to use different fingers, even though we usually play that G as a third finger on the D string. We're going to just use a fourth finger. I'm going to use a fourth finger because it's easier for me to use different fingers than to scooch back and forth. You do it whichever way works for you. All right, so I'm going to practice with my fourth finger. Ready? 1, 2, ready, and rest. 1, 3, 4. Yes, very good. Now there are a couple other things we need to practice. We need to go back and forth between the D and the G, D7 and G7. We need to go back and forth between D7 and A7, and we need to go from G7 to A7. And that works. Well, let's do D7 to A7 first. That goes in the middle of the pattern. Yeah, you hear it? D, A, D, A. So let's do a few of those. 1, 2, ready, and rest. 3, 4. Yes. And now let's go from D to G like this. Right? 1, 2, ready, and rest. 2, 4. Yes. Okay, good. And now let's go from G to A. It's going to sound like this. Okay, 1, 2, ready, and rest. 2, 3, 4. Hey, great. I'm going to count you in. Watch for the chords in the titles. 1, 2, ready, and play.